winning takes teamwork. The winningest team in Champ Car history is Newman Haas Racing. Founded by entrepreneur Carl Haas and movie legend Paul Newman, the team has produced such legendary champions as Mario and Michael Andretti, Nigel Mansell, and Cristiano D'Amata. Last weekend in Cleveland, Newman Haas rookie Sébastien Bourdais of France ran circles around the competition from pole position for his third victory of the season. But the winningest team in Champ Car racing this year is thoroughly Canadian Players Forsyth. Their only championship thus far came in 1995 with driver Jacques Villeneuve. This year, Players Forsyth appears poised to win another title, as Canadian-born Paul Tracy has 3 wins and leads the championship. Today, the Champ Cars visit Toronto, Canada's largest city and Tracy's hometown. It's been a decade since this native son has stood atop the podium in front of his home fans. Once again, the goal is victory, and any racer will tell you nothing is as sweet as a victory at home. No easy task in Toronto. Canadians love their motor racing, especially when there's a native son in with a shot at victory. And there are no fewer than 3 sons of the Maple Leaf with a shot of winning. Round 10 of the Bridgestone presents the Champ Car World Series powered by Ford. Welcome to the Molson Champ Car Grand Prix of Toronto. After 2 days of on and off rain, we have absolutely perfect weather. Sunny skies, a light breeze off Lake Ontario, and a massive pro-Canadian crowd. Absolutely immaculate conditions for an auto race. Hello and welcome everyone, I'm Bob Varsha. We're at the midway point of the Champ Car season for 2003, and as you just saw, the 2 dominant teams thus far with 7 victories in the 9 previous races are Newman Haas Racing and Players Forsyth. But when it comes to success here in Toronto, the scales definitely tip in favor of Chicago area-based Newman Haas. Look at the numbers: 6 victories and 2 poles to 0 wins for the home team from Players Forsyth, and they will definitely be trying to remove that goose egg in the win column today. Joining me once again this week, Tommy Kendall. 3 of the 4 drivers for Newman Haas and Players Forsyth have won. The one who has not was preseason title favorite Bruno Junqueira. He has been the stealth driver of the first half of the season.
He certainly has. His teammate has won 3 races. Bruno has not, and the subdued nature has extended to off-track as well. It's almost like he's been sedated. That might have started to change on the last lap at Cleveland last week. Here's Bruno Junqueira going around Paul Tracy, left a little room on the outside, and Paul took advantage going around the outside. Afterwards, Bruno said the only guy on earth that could pull that move off is Paul Tracy. We get here to Toronto, not feeling as complimentary. Feeling a little bit of his oats after qualifying yesterday. First, he slagged his teammate for a setup change that did not help him, that worked for Sébastien, and then he took aim at Paul Tracy. He says, I know that under pressure, Paul Tracy makes mistakes. That's going to be my strategy. In his hometown, challenging to Paul Tracy to a fight in front of all his people, that is left to the very brave.
Oh my gosh, that's right. Bruno Junqueira has definitely thrown down the gauntlet in favor against the hometown favorite Paul Tracy. Earlier, Derek Daly spoke with the pole sitter.
Well, Bob, around here they called him the thrill from West Hill, because West Hill is a suburb about 15 miles down the road where Paul Tracy grew up, and they just love him around here. And any professional racing driver would love to emulate what Paul Tracy did yesterday, because that pole lap was a blistering lap and just delighted every Canadian here, including yourself.
It was a great lap, and it was a great achievement for our team and team players. So we're looking forward to the race today. We had a good warm-up, so the car feels good.
Paul, Bruno Junqueira, who is your adversary this weekend beside you on the front row, he made a statement that he believes you crack under pressure, and that's his attack point this afternoon. Do you buy that?
Well, you have to consider the source. His teammate has won 3 races and won 3 poles, and Bruno says that he doesn't know anything about cars. So I'm plenty happy to invite him over to look at my trophy case anytime and see how many trophies I've got to see if I crack.
Good point. Well, the man, of course, in the heat of the battle against Paul Tracy all weekend and this afternoon is standing by with Calvin Fish. Calvin.
Well, Derek, they finished that race side-by-side in Cleveland, and today they'll start side-by-side on the front row of the grid. But Bruno Junqueira, you say you can make Paul Tracy crack under pressure. How do you do that in front of his home crowd?
I hope so. I passed him this warm-up. He had cold tires for sure, but I mean, it's 112 laps, and the Pacifica is going to be good, and we're going to try to make pressure on him, and let's see if we can have a break and pass him. I don't know. It's very difficult to pass, and Tracy is being good all the weekend, but maybe on a pit stop, maybe if you make a mistake, I don't know. We'll have to get around him because now it's time to score more points than him.
Well, Bruno Junqueira will be looking for his first victory of the season here at Toronto this afternoon. However, his teammate Sebastien Bourdais took his third victory of the year just last week at Cleveland. And in doing so, equal defeat by a rookie named Juan Pablo Montoya. But Sebastien, all three of your wins this year have come from the front row of the grid. You start a little bit further back in the pack today. Can you get it to the point?
Yeah, it's probably going to be very difficult. You know, it's very hard to pass. It's a tiny track, tricky, it's bumpy, it's narrow everywhere, and you know, everybody's really close from one to another in the top 6, so I think it's going to be tough, but it's a long race. It's 3 pit stops, so they're in some place to improve the position.
Okay, well, good luck this afternoon. Certainly Newman Haas have a very enviable record here on the streets of Toronto. Wouldn't surprise me to see both of their guys on the podium at the end of it, Bob.
All right, thank you, Calvin. And when Sebastien Bourdais says it's tight up front, he's not kidding. Look at where the top 5 men in the championship at the halfway point of the season will start this race. Paul Tracy leads the title chase. He's on pole. Bruno Junqueira 8 points behind in second. He starts second. Same for Michel Jourdain in third. And Paul Tracy's teammate, Patrick Carpentier, another Canadian favorite, will start from the number 5 spot. Once again, here's Derek Daly.
Well, as you can imagine, it's a hectic pace down here right now, but another Canadian favourite son has to be Patrick Carpentier. Fastest in the warm-up this morning. Great qualifying, your best ever here. Do you get that emotional surge, Patrick, that just might help you this afternoon also?
I don't know. One thing I know is I want to go more to the front this afternoon. I think the car is very good. We had a problem yesterday in qualifying and lost almost half a second down the back straight. So this morning we fixed it and basically did the same time as yesterday with a full tank and used tires. So I think the car is good, so it's looking good today.
Can you feel the emotional support here? I mean, people pester you on the autographs and want photographs. I mean, does that give you a bit of a thrill, a charge?
No, it's always fun. It's always a good thing to be here, especially see these crowds. And before the race, they really cheer and they yell, and it's very good. And to know pretty much all the drivers, so it's a good thing.
And it will be a powerhouse race between these two powerhouse teams, Bob, Players and Newman Haas.
No question about that, Derek. It is a shootout here on the streets of Toronto, Ontario. Players Forsyth against Newman Haas. A field of 19 is forming up. We'll be back in a moment with the starting grid. Green flag here at Exhibition Place.
CBS Sport.
Welcome back to Exhibition Place in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. A beautiful view from overhead on a beautiful day here in Canada's largest city. Ready to go racing here on the shores of Lake Ontario. Let's take a closer look at the Exhibition Place racetrack. Not an oval, not a road course, but a street circuit. Tommy Kendall.
Now, the concrete tunnel of Toronto could not be more different than the wide open runways we saw last week in Cleveland. The common thing, though, is you can pass here. The main areas, turn 1 and turn 3, especially turn 3. The new anti-blocking rules should give these guys plenty of room to race. Single file pretty much through turns 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, but they are also critical to lap time. The passing areas 1 and 3, but the whole lap critical to overall success.
With that, the cars are now on track. Let's take a look at our starting grid, powered like the Champ cars by Ford. On the pole for the 16th time in his career, but the first time in his hometown, Paul Tracy. And he's under big pressure. After qualifying, his mom, Vivian, promised her son was going to win the race. He starts next to Bruno Junqueira, the fastest man in provisional pole qualifying on Friday. On row 2, Michel Jourdain, his best ever starting position here in Toronto. He'll be next to another Canadian, Alex Tagliani, who promised his fans he would start from the front row and came up just short. On row 3, Patrick Carpentier. He has a win already this year. He makes it one Canadian on each of the first 3 rows and was the fastest man in the morning warm-up. He'll start next to the French rookie and the winner in Cleveland 2 weeks ago, Sebastien Bourdais. To Derek Daly.
Michel Jourdain has just about the exact setup that he used to dominate the streets of Long Beach as he tried to become the first single-car team to win the championship since Canadian Jacques Villeneuve in '95. Beside him is Alex Tagliani. He was not happy this morning, as I almost fall over the tires here. He was not happy this morning, changed almost everything on the car, including the rear differential. That's big.
That's a pro, Derek. Fall down. You just keep on talking, partner. Moving back to row 4, Roberto Moreno has his best qualifying performance in 2 seasons. He starts next to Spaniard Oriol Servia, celebrating his 29th birthday today here in Toronto. On row 5, Jimmy Vasser, the 96 champ, podiumed in this race back in 1998. He starts next to Adrian Fernandez of Mexico, who won in Portland, Oregon back in June. On row 6, Darren Manning, a rookie, was 4th quick in the morning warm-up. Keep your eye on the Englishman. He starts next to Mario Dominguez, the most successful driver ever for the Herdez competition team. On row 7, Tiago Monteiro of Portugal is back after missing the Cleveland race a week ago with a mild concussion in a crash. He starts next to fellow rookie Ryan Hunter-Reay, a former winner in the Driver Development Series Barber Dodge Pro Series here in Toronto. To Calvin Fish.
Bob, whilst all the championship contenders are bunched at the front end of the field, look for a revitalized Roberto Moreno in the Herdez car to really be snapping at their heels today. Recent testing has really turned things around. He had a strong run at Cleveland last week till he was attacked by Jimmy Vasser. Today he'll start 7th, his strongest qualifying run of the season.
On row 8, Max Pappas of Italy is a regular top 10 finisher here in Toronto. He starts next to Brazilian rookie Mario Haberfeld. On row 9, Rodolfo Levine, a rookie, starts next to fellow first-timer. In fact, this is the series debut for Alex Barafico. And on row 10, from Rhode Island, Jeff Voss will start caboose on the field in today's race. As the cars continue to warm up their Ford engines and Bridgestone tires, let's check our Bridgestone keys to the race. The lap distance, as Tommy Kendall mentioned, 1.755 miles with 11 turns, 7 right and 4 left. Race distance is 112 laps, and we do have a maximum pit stop interval. You may go no further than 31 laps before you must stop and change all 4 tires. So it will be a 3 pit stop race, counting backward from lap 112 in 31 lap increments. The pit windows will open as early as laps 19, 50, and 81 if you still plan to make the race finish on the minimum of 3 stops. As we mentioned, absolutely beautiful here in Toronto today. 70 degrees warm, 82% humidity, a light breeze from the south over Lake Ontario, and the forecast for the first time this weekend is for mostly sunny skies. We put away the wet weather Bridgestone tires. Now, because this is a street circuit, the roads are crowned, not flat like a racetrack, and unlike Cleveland 2 weeks ago, there are unforgiving concrete blocks at the edge of the racing surface. You cannot make a mistake in a place like Toronto.
Now, you saw some guys getting away with hanging a half a wheel off, even hang a whole wheel in the grass there at Cleveland. If you do that here, it'll peel both suspension corners off and your day will be done. Some guys will run out there and brush against the wall, but anything more than just a slight brush, and these cars are fragile. They're used to taking loads in the direction they're designed for. Anything from the side, they don't like.
For the 7th time in 10 races, Paul Tracy starts on the front row. The last Canadian to lead here, the late Greg Moore, the much lamented, one of Canada's great young racing drivers. He led here in 1997. Green flag, we're underway at Exhibition Place.
Look at the scrap behind the lead. You always hear in pro sports talking about the home field guys getting a little edge from the officials, and Paul definitely went early and got the green anyways. Bruno seemed content, more worried about holding off the guys behind him.
First time on the Lakeshore Boulevard, the long back straightaway, fastest part of the racetrack, from 185 miles an hour down to about 40 miles an hour for that hairpin at turn 3. There's Alex Tagliani. Oh, and we've got a bottleneck at turn 3. Adrian Fernandez, both of the Stefan Johansson American Spirit drivers, Jimmy Vasser and Ryan. Tiago Monteiro waving for a push start. Mario Haberfeld in yellow and red at the bottom of the screen. And Max Pappas in the white Scientific Atlanta car from PK Racing. Full course caution.
And it's pretty narrow down there. There's room on the straightaway.
It's like damage to the right front wheel on Jimmy Vasser's car.
These 2 cars interlocked. The right front of Jimmy's car is peeled back and it's stuck in there on the red and blue car of Adrian Fernandez. Hunter-Reay.
Once they get separated, just come back in. We'll give it a check.
Using the quick jack to jack the back of the car up and slide it over.
Well, this is going to be interesting to watch. These cars might not be damaged. See Jimmy Vasser in the red and blue car on the left working the steering wheel. He's actually up on the side pod of Fernandez's car. There's Ryan Hunter-Reay, Vasser's teammate, waiting for them to sort it out. Adrian Fernandez is on his way. Vasser is already gone. No, he's not. He's parked at the left of your screen.
And the reason Adrian was in such a hurry there is you see the pace cars coming. He was able to get going without losing a lap. So if his car's okay, he'll join at the back of the field. Hunter-Reay's wondering why he wasn't tangled up. They didn't push start him.
Front end damage on Vasser's car. You saw them throwing the bits of the front wing over the wall. From on board Max Pappas's car.
He's coming up the outside of Hunter-Reay, but look further up.
Looks like it was basically Vasser and Fernandez tangling.
This is on board with Darren Manning. Oh, Fernandez was going around the outside. Oh, Darren gave a shot to Jimmy, knocked him into Adrian. Adrian was passing Jimmy on the outside. On the right side of your screen, you'll see the red and green car of Adrian come in. Jimmy gets hit from behind, knocked into Adrian, and that's it.
One more angle from overhead. Yep, Manning into the back of Vasser, who spins Fernandez, and it's all stopped. Meanwhile, up ahead, Alex Tagliani went wheel to wheel with Bruno Junqueira and took away second place to Calvin Fish.
Stefan, turn 3 notorious. Both your cars involved. Any word on damage right now on the radio?
Well, they think both cars are okay, but they just can't get them started because it's uphill, you know, and they're kind of struggling to get them going. But Jimmy just radioed in and thought his car looked okay, but, you know, until it gets moving, who knows?
Okay, they're hoping not to go a lap down, but they need to work on those cars quickly.
Stefan Johansson, a former Rookie of the Year in the Champ Cars, now a team owner, still an active racer in sports car endurance racing. Adrian Fernandez, with a win under his belt this year, his first as an owner driver, pulls into the pits.
Everything looks fine on the top wishbones. It looks good. Just do a tire change. We're okay.
Anderson got on the radio and said, make sure you catch the back of the pack first before you make the stop. It was a precautionary to make sure there was no serious damage. Tom Anderson is here. Tom, if I can just have a quick word, do you know, is there any damage or is he okay?
Doesn't look like there's any damage, so we think he's okay. Just tires and fuel, and he was at the back anyway, so it didn't cost us anything, Derek.
Thank you, Tom.
Adrian Fernandez took his first career victory here in 1996.
I think Tom needs to take a closer look. The flugelhorns that create downforce in front of the right rear tire are missing.
An exciting start to the race. We'll be back in a moment to Exhibition Place in Toronto. To Exhibition Place in Toronto, Canada, just in time for the green flag to wave. We are back underway on lap 5 of 112 scheduled here in the Molson Champ Car Grand Prix of Toronto. Bob Varsha, Tommy Kendall, Derek Daly, and Calvin Fish with you. Paul Tracy leads from pole. Alex Tagliani, another darling of this big Canadian crowd, got by Bruno Junqueira for second before the yellow flag came out. Junqueira runs third, followed by Michel Jourdain, Patrick Carpentier, Oriol Servia, Roberto Moreno. Sebastian Bourdais dropped back from row 3 to the 8th spot, while Darren Manning is 9th and Mario Dominguez 10th. On board with Carpentier.
They're running in a tight pack like that when they got down into turn 3 while the tires aren't up to temperature or pressure yet. The problem is with these new rules where you're not allowed to defend your position by moving over to the inside, when you get jammed up in a bottleneck, the inside is wide open. It's going to be interesting to watch how the guys who have a guy in front of them they're trying to work on and a guy behind him like Patrick does. He has Servia behind him, and while he's trying to get around Jourdain, that's really tough under these new rules.
Swinging off of Nova Scotia Avenue onto Princes Boulevard here at Exhibition Place, the home of the annual Canadian National Exhibition. The cars swing down into turn 1. Now, there are no cars out of the race after that early full course caution, but Jimmy Vasser runs last. Calvin Fish has more on him.
Well, Jimmy had to make a pit stop. You can see here they had to change the front wing assembly here, completely knocked off the elements here, and there's no way you can run this course with that amount of front wing. So it was a lengthy pit stop, and he went a lap down, I believe, Bob.
Yes, he has. He and Ryan Hunter-Reay, his teammate, are both a lap down, and there's Mario Haberfeld down in turn 3, I believe. And one of the Coyne cars, Dale Coyne Racing from Illinois, also off. And once again, we have a full course caution. I believe that's Alex Sparafico, a young Brazilian making his first start in the Champ Cars. But boy, it is getting in at the deep end to come to a street circuit like Toronto for your first start in these 750 horsepower cars.
And he's one of the racing Sparaficos, I believe, with brothers and cousins. There are 5, a couple racing over in Formula 3000. Alex had a win a couple years back in the Barber Dodge Series, but this is his first time. It is definitely jumping in at the deep end. No testing, first time in a Champ Car at Toronto.
As Paul Tracy moves through this season, championship or not, he is racking up the milestones. A week ago in Cleveland, he led the 3,000th lap of his career. With this lap led, Paul Tracy passes the great Mario Andretti for 5th on CART's all-time lap leader list. He's now led 3,066 laps. On board with Alex Tagliani. He was on the march from the start. Starts on row 2. This is at the start. There's Bruno Junqueira. That's Michel Jourdain to his right in turn 1 on the outside.
I tell you, that is a move. You talked about the crown to the road. The outside there is sloped away, and it is quite a bit less grip than where Jourdain was. You need help from the guy on the inside to do that, too.
Junqueira up ahead.
Backs off early, but then lets the car roll down up the inside. Bruno sees him coming at the last second and gives him room. Again, another pass that required some cooperation.
Now from overhead. The blue car is Tagliani. First, Jourdain on the outside. Then at the end of the Lakeshore Boulevard backstretch, he got Junqueira, and we are back to green. This is live action. On board with Patrick Carpentier wearing our visor cam. You're looking through the visor of Carpentier.
When his head moves back and forth, a quick check in both side mirrors to see where Royal Serbia is.
Once again into turn 3. Very heavy braking from top speed. It's Rodolfo Levine and Tiago Montero, a pair of rookies going at it. On board with Darren Manning.
I don't expect any damage on Manning's car. When he gave the shot to Jimmy Vasser, it looked like he had him squared up, hit on that very strong center nose structure right on Vasser's gearbox. The move that gained Paul Tracy the nickname the Chrome Horn. People always marveled how Paul could have so much contact and never have his car damaged. The secret there is right before you're going to hit someone, if you square it up, square the wheels, the center of that car is quite strong.
You just saw a piece of paper or plastic debris get sucked up under Alex Tagliani's car, and I didn't see it lying on the pavement after he passed. I hope it didn't go in to one of those side pods, potentially blocking one of his radiators.
And we see the telemetry provided by Ford, and we've seen this before in racing. The difference with this telemetry is the actual telemetry output by the engine. Usually the manufacturers are so guarded that you have to have a secondary box that is not nearly as accurate or as real time. This one is sampling 5 times a second, and it's showing us actual RPM, mile per hour gear, and when the brake is applied. We're working on the teams. The teams don't want us to release actual brake pressure. But so right now all we have is brake on and brake off. But hopefully as the year goes on, we can improve that.
You're on board with Michel Jourdain, who has a victory this year on the Milwaukee Mile. His car owner, Bobby Rahal, a 3-time Champ Car champion, won the inaugural running of this race back in 1986, something Bobby specialized in. He has more wins in inaugural races than any other driver in Champ Car history. Watching, this is Haberfeld going off and taking young Alex Sparafico out of the race in turn 3.
And he came down the inside. I couldn't tell if that was Levine who he was coming down the inside of, but he was way over in the dirty part, and poor Sparafico was an innocent bystander. Haberfeld, once he got in there, he got on the slick part of the track with way too much speed, couldn't get it stopped, almost cleared Sparafico, but took out his right front suspension going by.
Long, long right-hander, Manitoba Drive. All of the streets here at Exhibition Place, weaving in and out of the various buildings, are named for Canadian races, with the exception of our start-finish straightaway, Princes Boulevard.
Bob, quick updates on Haberfeld. He believes something broke in the car when he hit the brakes.
Well, he certainly came through turn 3 at unabated speed, knocking Sparapico out of the race as well. It looked as though he hadn't braked at all. So that takes 2 cars out of the race. And the 2 American Spirit Team Johansson drivers, Jimmy Vasser and Ryan Hunter-Reay, each run 1 lap down. 15 cars on the lead lap. On board with Carpentier again, looking out through his visor. You can see how low the driver sits in the car and how difficult it can be to see. Back on Manitoba. Look at Carpentier. A huge crowd favorite and a very engaging guy. Nearly always with a smile on his face, but it hasn't been that way all year. As we go on board now with another Canadian driver, Alex Tagliani. Derek Daly is standing by with his car owner, Paul Gentilozzi.
You said it right earlier, Bob. Tag is one of the darlings of the crowd here. Paul, something unusual. You made dramatic changes to Tagliani's car after the warm-up, particularly to the differential. That's a huge gamble.
Well, we started our debrief after the morning warm-up. Tag came in the meeting room and said the car really sucks. So from there, it had to get changed. And I really got to compliment Alex and the engineers. They worked together. You know, that's a tense time, 2 hours before the race. And you got a 10th place car and you're up front, you got to change a lot. So we did. He's working with it. And really what is important, he got a great start. A lot like yours.
Did you like my backflip?
The flying Melendez have nothing to worry about.
Paul Gentilozzi, a great guy and rapidly becoming a real power player in auto racing. Former Trans Am champion, owns the marketing rights to that series, has a team in that series as well as the champ cars.
Not getting any closer to you.
From this onboard, you can see how much Alex Tagliani is using the curbs, more than I've seen any other driver thus far. I'm wondering if some of their changes weren't meant to make the car accommodate the curbs a little better. The differentials that Paul mentioned are one of the most sophisticated and complicated parts of this car. They affect every aspect of both braking, corner entry, mid-corner balance, and power down on exit. So they're kind of the black science. Nobody quite knows what everybody else does in that regard. You can see what other people are doing aerodynamically, but the diffs are an area where they spend a lot of time.
Paul Tracy embodies the racing maxim that if you're out front, all the trouble has to take place behind you. And right now, he has nearly 6 seconds on the field. Let's get more on his team with Calvin Fish.
With Neil Mickelwright, Tag has had a great start to the race, but Paul has about a second a lap right now. Do you need to calm him down? How pumped up is he today?
No, obviously, I mean, in front of the home crowd here in the great city of Toronto, he's pretty pumped up. He's enjoying himself. But, you know, right now he's well within the range of what the car's capable of. So he's just pulling away nice and gently.
Is the pace you expected for the race today? Do you expect it to get quicker as we get rubber in?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much so. We figured it'd be about this. I think that, you know, a few more laps, I think everybody else will start picking it up.
Okay, well, a lot of rain this weekend. The track should get quicker as the race progresses, Bob.
And you saw that big gap from Paul Tracy back to fellow Canadian Alex Tagliani. You're on the nose of Darren Manning's car. The RAC Reynard from Walker Racing, and you're looking at the right front end plate and the brake duct on the right front wheel.
That's the brake duct right there. You can see how big it is. They need a lot of brake in to cool the rotors, calipers, and the fluid. But right after, one of the most interested viewers of this new shot was the Walker team themselves. First thing they said when they saw it in practice is, wow, look how much that front wing deflects.
Unless I'm mistaken, they've done something to it because it looks a lot stiffer now. It's not flexing near as much as it was when we first saw it this weekend. And you're on board just above Darren Manning's head now as he swings onto Prince's Boulevard to complete lap 15. To Calvin Fish.
Well, Darren Manning is another one of the rookies who had never seen this racetrack until Friday, Bob, but certainly an impressive performance by him. I spoke to the team just before the off today. They said a major suspension setup change overnight transformed the car in the warm-up. They're in the top 5. They expect a good run from Darren today.
Well, they're getting one right now. Manning runs 10th despite that contact on lap 1. Into turn 3, they lunge once again. It's Mario Dominguez, last year's Rookie of the Year, on the road ahead of Darren Manning. Our pictures are coming to us today from our host broadcaster, Global TV of Canada. We thank them for these great pictures. We'll be back with more of the Molson Champ Car Grand Prix of Toronto in a moment. Paul Tracy leading and pulling away from Alex Tagliani with Bruno Junqueira in third. We'll be back. Stay with us. New all this week right here on CBS, America's most watched network. Paul Tracy leads now by 8.7 seconds over Alex Tagliani as he swings into turn one again, dangerously close to that unforgiving concrete wall. Look at the crowd on hand. 3 races for the Champ Cars in Canada this year, here in Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal. And we get huge crowds and great parties at each of the 3.
This is an absolutely incredible performance by Tracy. We saw that margin 0.4 of a second quicker than everybody in qualifying was no fluke. Every lap of Paul's has been under a minute 1. The only driver, every lap of his has been faster than everybody else's best lap. Now the track will change as they get more and more rubber down. The cars tend to shift towards understeer, meaning the rear of the cars pick up grip. We're on board with Michel Jourdain. When you see him watch his hands, using quite a bit of steering, meaning the front of the car is not turning. His team is going to have to chase that on the pit stops because that's only going to get worse as more rubber goes down on the track. That's why Jourdain is not able to challenge Junqueira in front of him.
Ford telemetry across the bottom of the screen. These Ford Cosworth engines will rev to 12,000 RPM. To Derek Daly.
Team manager Ray Lato anticipated this type of understeer because as the temperature goes up, the track gets more grip. These cars always go to a loose or a push understeer condition. So expect to see a big wad of front wing put into Jourdain's car on this first pit stop. Calvin?
Well, the word down here in Bruno Junqueira's pit, Derek, is the fact that he thinks that Tagliani may be holding him up a little bit. They're not real tight right now, but they're hoping to try and get around him in the pit stop. Remember, his teammate Sebastian Bourdais did that to grab the lead at Cleveland a couple of weeks ago. And what they'll probably do is maybe short fill him, meaning they won't top the tank up and try and save a little bit of time here in pit lane.
Now, we scratched our head a little bit when Bruno said he was being held out. Now, it could be that early on he made a run and saw that he was being held up, could run quicker, but there's no sense in running right underneath Tagliani's wing if he doesn't feel he can get past him. It's harder on tires, harder on brakes, use a little bit more fuel. So what he'll do, what I would expect him to do when that window gets close, when we get close to lap 31, Bruno will try to turn up the heat, be as close to Tagliani when they pit, try to spend less time stationary and get around him.
There's a look at Junqueira, 26 years old, a second-generation racer from Brazil. His father, Jose, was a very distinguished Brazilian driver. Once again, the pit window's 31 laps. The pit window is now open for stop number 1 and will extend to lap 31.
Because of the penalty you would pay by coming out on cold tires, even if you pitted now, you could make it the rest of the way on only 2 more stops. Unless we get a yellow flag, I would expect everybody to go to lap 31. But yellow comes out, everybody will hit the pits right away.
A little bit of a slide there from Junqueira's Lola.
That's one thing I expect to see get a lot worse here at Toronto, both under braking and acceleration. As the track goes along, it picks up rubber, it picks up some grip, but no traction control this year. In years past, the guys who have won, guys like Michael Andretti and Alex Zanardi, were guys that could put the power down without traction control.
On board with Jourdain. This is the front straightaway. There goes the flag stand. Jourdain is 4th, just ahead of Patrick Carpentier. You can just see the blue and white Lola from the Players Foresight team. Now we go aboard with Carpentier. I mentioned earlier that he's normally the most outgoing of guys, but it hasn't been that way all season long. He struggled last year to get a new contract with this team. They weren't sure they wanted to keep him, the truth compels us to say. They wound up doing so, but then they brought on Paul Tracy and gave Tracy a big contract, switched from Reynard to Lola chassis, shuffled team personnel, and Carpentier was left shrugging his shoulders, wondering where he stood in the firmament of the powerhouse Players Foresight team. Now he says he and Tracy and the engineering staff are all getting along well.
Actually, I talked to Neil Mickelwright about just that this morning. I said, did Paul coming in with his intensity force everyone to raise their game? He didn't see it exactly that way. He said, one thing that's helped is actually that Pat and Paul get along better than Alex and Pat did last year. So instead of, big oversteer, you see that coming out on the front straightaway. So they work very well together. The exchange of information is seamless. It's raised the intensity, and Pat's really raised his game a lot more consistently quick, but it's more harmonious within the team than in the past.
Single car, the Vistion machine from Patrick Racing, another of the most distinguished teams in Champ Car racing. This is Oriol Servia, 29 years ago today, from Pals in Spain, the extreme northeastern corner of the country, the Catalunya province.
Another area where you see the guys fighting for traction. As soon as they come off that concrete, around 3, up around turn 4. Turn 4 with traction control, you just put the thing on the mat, and it'll cut a few cylinders, maybe cut a little bit of fuel to keep the car from sliding. But now they have to manage that. When they come over the hill, the car gets a little bit light, a little too tight to go flat out through the left-hand kink.
Servia still looking for his first career win. He finished second on the Milwaukee Mile to first-time winner Michel Jourdain. Now here's Roberto Moreno, starting for his best qualifying position in a couple of seasons. He did not drive in the Champ Car Series last year. He's with Herdez competition now. He too has been going through a learning process, getting himself involved in the chemistry of the team. He's the senior driver on the circuit in his, well, we'll just say he's a 40-something. And he is coming on to Derek Daly.
And technical director for the Herdez team is Tom Brown. Tom, you have 2 cars in the top 10. I know you fell off the pace having had such a great run in Europe, but you believe Moreno's experience really does him good around here.
For sure, Roberto's had a very good weekend here. We came off the truck pretty fast, especially in the wet. He knows his way around. He knows the little tricks you've got to do in Toronto. It's very bumpy, so he knows just where to brake and where to run, and that's helped Mario too this weekend.
Do you develop these cars as the season goes on with new bits, new pieces?
Yeah, we did. We had a little slump, which we weren't very pleased with after Europe, but we had a very good test at Mid-Ohio. We went to Elkhart Lake, and at the same time, we had the 7-post test at the ARC, so this all helped.
Yes, it does help, but hopefully you don't need too much help because one of your Herdez cars, Tom, is on the way into the pit lane.
No question about it, Derek. And minus the rear wing is Mario Dominguez.
Adrian Fernandez coming up through the field, got into the back of Dominguez. We saw that first lap incident with Adrian. He was able to get restarted, pitted to check for damage, and he had made his way all the way up into 11th.
There's another look. Oh, Dominguez got backwards into the tire wall, then trying to get back out. Fernandez arrives on the scene and just misses him.
My apologies.
Whoa, that was not Fernandez's problem at all. And it's fortunate for this man, Dominguez, that it happened in turn number 8, so he had a short bolt to the pits for a new rear wing. Derek Daly is there.
And it is a frustrating time. There are 6 bolts, 3 either side of the mounting point these mechanics must take out to get this rear wing on. Looking around, the rest of the car looks completely undamaged, but frustration for Dominguez running in the top 10.
Well, more of those handling problems that you talked about, Tommy.
That's one of those areas that's extremely bumpy. This is coming down into turn 9. Gets the rears locked up under braking. When you have the rear wheels locked, it's like having the e-brake on in a rental car. The back wants to pass, swap ends with the front in a hurry.
The problem with these rearward impacts that knock off the rear wing is if you mangle that rear support that Derek was just talking about, getting those 6 bolts out and a new piece on gets a lot tougher. Meanwhile, up front, Paul Tracy continues on his way. History is not on his side. This race has only been won twice from pole. CBS coverage of the Molson Champ Car Grand Prix of Toronto will continue after this message and a word from your local station. The daily news calls instantly addictive and thoroughly entertaining as thousands of men compete for the perfect woman, but her 2 best friends get to weed out the losers. If you miss the premiere of Cupid, catch a special encore Tuesday at 9, 8 Central. Then don't miss an all-new Cupid Wednesday at 10, 9 Central, all here on CBS, America's most watched network. Welcome back live to Exhibition Place in Toronto, Canada, as Alex Tagliani, who was running in 2nd place, pulls to a stop.
And he had contact. You can see the right rear wheel was pointed, was towed in, meaning it was pointing towards the center of the car rather than straight ahead. Obviously, the rear toe link has been damaged due to contact. He heard he had a trouble in turn 3, and when he got it going again, he tangled with Bruno Junqueira. Bruno is still on track. Have to follow up to see if there's any damage to the Pacific Care car.
Tagliani is parked at the end of pit lane, well out of the racing traffic, so we should not get a full course caution. They'll just push him behind the wall.
And that's 2 incidents so far. We saw the one with Dominguez where he lost the car under braking, and Tagliani had some more trouble. So we need to see if the guys are struggling, if it's just a change in balance from the tires wearing, or if they're actually having brake trouble.
Well, Tagliani out. It's going to take some of the power out of this pro-Canadian crowd. To Derek Daly.
Indeed, this Johnson Controls team, Paul, do you know, is the damage because of contact or is the contact because of damage?
We don't know yet. He thought he had a flat. He might have clipped the wall. We really haven't been able to talk about it yet. As soon as we know, we'll let you know.
Okay, thank you, Paul.
Derek, what we're hearing for the corner workers is that Tagliani blew turn 3, went straight on after contact with Bruno Junqueira. Junqueira now runs second behind this man, Paul Tracy.
A big power slide leaving turn 1 by Tracy as he tries to get close, get around lap traffic. This is Max Pappas, who came under fire last week for not yielding to the leaders, resulted in a rule change where when they show the blue flag at start finish with the car number, if you do not yield immediately, you will be penalized. There was some drivers meeting as well about this between the drivers. Big slide again from Paul, starting to get frustrated.
Pit stop should be coming this lap or next. And the leader ducks into the pit lane.
Watch your speed in the pit lane. Watch your speed in the pit lane. You have an open pit. We are all ready for you. Look for Steve waiting.
You hear Neil Mickel right there giving him directions, a big lead. This should be a comfortable start for these boys.
17-second lead, right on the mark.
We expect no changes on the car. Paul's radioed in and said the car has a slight bit of understeer, but unless they've changed their mind, we expect just fuel and new Bridgestone tires only. I see no wing change, and he's back out here. Good clean start.
Going out on used tires, it appears. Let's go to Derek Daly.
Michel Jourdain is in. They're going to put 2 full turns in the front wing to get some grip on those front tires. It's the only change to the car. Remember, the long lead type setup, we expect him to get much faster.
We saw Bruno Junqueira sliding into his pit. Here comes Patrick Carpentier, Oriol Servia, the orange and white Visteon car. Sebastian Bourdais rolls out. It's interesting to listen to those radio conversations, Tommy. Some teams will just tell the guy, watch your speed in the pit lane. We just heard Neil Mickelwright issue this non-stop stream of commentary as Tracy made his way down the pit lane.
Well, there's a lot going on, and the driver knows what he needs to do, but when you switch gears into the pit lane, there's a lot of things that have to do with the pit lane speed limiter, resetting fuel, all those things, and you know, Neil has a very reassuring voice. You saw Paul, I think he was probably a little rattled on the radio. I think probably more for effect to let the officials know he wasn't happy with that.
On our position relative to Junkie on the next time.
Moving traffic up ahead for Paul Tracy. As I mentioned earlier, it's Thiago Monteiro.
Coming out on cold tires. You saw Paul go over to the inside offline, and the marbles are starting to form offline there. You don't want to do that too often because the hot tires pick all that up.
I mentioned only 2 winners from pole of the 17 previous runners of this race. Cristiano D'Amato last year en route to the championship, and Michael Andretti back in 1991. There are the marbles left and right, those little bits of black rubber lying on the racing surface that could put you in the wall in a heartbeat.
The reason you saw Bruno switch from the right side to the left side so dramatically, there's a big bump. You want to line up on the left side of the track, TV screen right, setting up for turn 3, but there's a big enough bump. The guys stay to the right until they clear that, pull over to the left for braking.
In the pit stops, upper left, the running order has colored boxes on the left. If the box is green, the driver made up a spot on the pit stop. If it's red, he lost one. Black, no change. Adrian Fernandez is back in. Meanwhile, let's get to Calvin Fish.
Well, a quick update on Bruno Junqueira. He did have contact with Tagliani, a front wing change there, and we're with Tag right now. Tag, you have to be so disappointed. What happened there on course?
We had a hard time with the car on the braking, and I was fighting a very bad push, but we were waiting for the first stop to change the car, and I went a little bit deep in turn 3. When I turned, I was already like around the corner, and I guess Bruno was there, and he hit me on the right rear and bent the suspension pretty bad.
Tough day for Tag. There was suspension damage to the right rear, but we understand Bruno's car is fine. Peter Gibbons gave it the thumbs up after that pit stop.
All right, let's take a look at the incident that Alex Tagliani just described. Down into 3. Here comes Tagliani.
Now, he went over that big bump under braking. Can't quite get the car stopped. Runs wide. Bruno is on line. Accelerate. You saw Tag cut across and was, once he went wide, he was angling and he was clipping the right side wall. He was out way wide, and then he shot back across to the right, not knowing that Bruno was coming. So he runs wide. Once he turns it, he aims for the right wall here and pinches Bruno.
And the result is a badly bent right rear suspension. So Tagliani is done. The running order is Tracy and Junqueira, who started 1-2 in this race. You're looking at Bruno right there, the Lilly car. Michel Jourdain, Patrick Carpentier, Oriol Servia, Sebastian Bourdais, and Roberto Moreno. And with these warm weather conditions, bright sun, and lots of hard work in these cars, including lots of lateral G's in these turns, these drivers are having to work very, very hard at a very high heart rate. In fact, Paul Tracy's personal trainer, Jim Leo, suggests that driving a champ car at 10/10 on a hot afternoon for a couple of hours is the equivalent of riding a bicycle at 22 miles an hour for that length of time.
Rodolfo Levine doing he can to get out of Paul's way. Once he got on the straightaway, he pulled over to the right, so Paul did not have to go offline and pick up any junk on his tires.
Let's get down to the pit lane, and Derek Daly.
With Joe Barbieri, project supervisor for Bridgestone. Joe, over the last 3 or 4 races, we've heard people like Paul Tracy say, I have to keep sticker tires for the race, that'll be an advantage. People are not so sure. Where do you see that lie?
I think it's more or less anything that you can get inside the driver's head. I think it gives the driver a lot of confidence. I don't think it's any different than maybe buying a new set of clubs. You think you're going to improve your golf score, and anything you can do to get the mindset of that driver and that he's got top quality product, it's all better for him.
But you don't believe that keeping stickers is necessarily a speed advantage during the race when you have brand new stickers on?
Not necessarily. It really depends on the track about whether or not you want a harder compound and maybe set it, do a couple laps to secure that compound and to double check the balance. Other than that, I don't think there's any really time difference at all.
Thank you, Joe. And this question, of course, came up and was with a big question mark after Cleveland, when Tracy had 4 sets of sticker Bridgestones, and yet he struggled to get them up to speed quick enough during the race. Calvin?
Well, there's different viewpoints on that. You're absolutely right. After Cleveland, the players team have gone in a different direction, actually knocking the sheen off these tires by running them for 2 laps prior to running them in the race. But talking to Rocky, who's engineer on Bruno Junqueira's car, he says that we have lots of stickers. We think with the track temperature here and the ambient, not like it was at nighttime in Cleveland, sticker tires may give us a little bit of an edge. So obviously some teams going in one direction, some in another.
Max Pappas going slowly. I believe that's out on
Something
Manitoba.
broke in the middle of the straight.
Something broken. Might be a half shaft. That left side wheel, driver's right, looks to be wobbling.
Right.
The suspension's gone down, and what happens is with the downforce, it pushes the back down. You see the right rear is not moving at all. The suspension is broken there. It lifts the left front off the ground. Yep, you can see it bouncing. Might be a push rod or something, which is connected to the spring, keeps that end of the car up in the air. Carpentier has pulled himself up right to the back of Michel Jourdain. Jourdain has been running quicker than in the previous stint. They have that extra front wing, but Carpentier is all over him. Less than a half a second separating those two at start-finish.
This battle taking place about 3 seconds behind the second-place car, Bruno Junqueira. Paul Tracy's lead now up to 18.6 seconds. There is Tracy. Now we'll see if we can go on board Max Pappas's car and see what it was like for him when that suspension failure took place. It was on this part of the racetrack, Thunder Rally, as it's called here at Exhibition Place. 185 miles an hour or so. Let's check it out. Watch the right rear.
Wow, and you see what looks like the wheel popping up. It's actually the whole car dropping down. There's several thousand pounds of downforce created by... He is lucky that happened there and not about 4 or 5 seconds later. If that had happened in the braking zone, there's no way he could have gotten that car stopped.
Max is climbing out. Derek Staley is down there.
Here with engineer John Ward. John, we don't know what it was. Do you know?
We're not exactly sure, but we had a failure, some sort of failure in the right rear in the suspension area. We'll have to take it back to the garage and see what it really is.
Okay, thank you, John. If I could just grab... Oh, Max doesn't want to talk right now. I'll grab Max in just a second.
All right, thank you very much, Derek. Mad Max, as he's known, came to fame here in American circles at the 24 Hours of Daytona sports car race, where he climbed into a Ferrari and started cutting laps at qualifying speed after 24 hours of racing. Got within a lap of the race leader in a gallant performance that has endeared him to legions of fans around the country. Great to have Max back with the Champ Cars. We'll be back to beautiful Toronto, Ontario, Canada in just a moment. Get personalized auto racing coverage highlighting your favorite drivers in headlines, standings, results, and more. Just click on Customize at CBSSportsline.com or on America Online, enter keyword CBS Sportsline. Welcome back to Exhibition Place. To the left of your screen, the National Trade Center, which houses a massive automobilia show, just a part of the festivities surrounding the Molson Champ Car Grand Prix of Toronto. To the pit lane and Derek Daly.
And you see lots of discussions going on here at PK Racing. Mo Gugelman, Craig Pollock, Russell Cameron, of course, John Ward. Mad Max is here. Max, I know it's disappointing, but at least I think you're beginning to identify the type of changes and modifications this car needs to put it up the front.
Absolutely. We really needed this track. We really needed to run, and I'm really disappointed. We were not maybe super quick, but we really needed this race to learn more about our car. And something broke on the rear end of the car. I'm not so sure what, but we have a great group of people here at PK Racing. Just a matter of time.
Max, when it brakes at 175 miles an hour like that, is it scary for the driver?
I tell you, it took a lot of to keep the car straight on a straightaway, and I think that it's something I don't want to get used to, but we're a bit lucky this time.
I think that answer was yes.
Mad Max with 4 top 10s here in Toronto. And credit PK Racing, that team was brought together a matter of weeks before the season opener in St. Petersburg, Florida. So they've had to work around the clock since then to try to get on a par with teams such as Newman Haas and Players Foresight.
The K in PKR is Kevin Kalkoven, and he gave one of the more upbeat interviews during the qualifying show yesterday. Just basically said there are a lot of people that really think a lot about this series. And Kalkoven, if you're not familiar, not a very common name, but a really heavy hitter. And he's one of the names you hear a lot behind the scenes on the future for cars going forward.
Plus 20.4 on junkie.
That's Paul Tracy's crew telling him he has 20.4 seconds in hand over Bruno Junqueira. This is an absolute blowout by the home favorite from Scarborough, Ontario, Canada, Paul Tracy. Now, as I mentioned, there's a lot going on here in Toronto, including several races from CART's driver development ladder. Young stars, names to remember. Calvin Fish is standing by with a couple of them.
Well, yesterday, AJ Allmendinger took his 4th victory in the Toyota Atlantic Championship, increasing the lead. This town has been kind to you. You won there in the Barber Dodge Pro Series last year and another win yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, it was an amazing race. Root Sport gave me a great car. They give me a great car all season, and more importantly, with my 4th victory, it really extended the points lead now, and I'm looking forward to 3 Rivers.
Great run yesterday, returning to Canada in a couple of weeks, and his teammate, Aaron Justice, completes another 1-2 for the Root Sport team. You had a tremendous battle, one of the best Atlantic races in recent years.
Yeah, I mean, it was better than we planned on. We were 1-2 at the start. We planned on just taking off, leaving the field, and dropping back to 6 was not what I had in mind, but coming back to 2nd was really exciting.
An awesome run for both of these boys, and look for their names and the Root Sport name to maybe in Champ Car within the next year to 2 years, Bob.
That's great news. Let's hope it comes about.
Those two guys in the background, the guy there right there in the white shirt and the other guy in the Paul Tracy rider, those are part of Paul Tracy's Vegas posse, and 3 of them made the trip out here to Toronto. They've got big plans for tonight. There's going to be a party either way, but it's looking like it might be a celebration.
Should we invite everybody? We'll think about that for a while. Here's the results of round 7 of the Toyota Atlantic Championship, the top step of the driver development ladder in championship auto racing team system. A.J. Allmendinger, 4th victory of the year. Aaron Justice, as Calvin mentioned, made it a 1-2 for the brand new Rousport team under owner Carl Russo and team president Jeremy Dale. And in the Barber Dodge Pro Series, which ran this morning here in Toronto, Memo Rojas picked up a victory over fellow young American Colin Fleming and David Martinez, and that was quite a race, with the standings changing virtually with every one of the 32 laps of racing. Great view there, looking back from the side pod aboard Darren Manning's Walker Racing machine. And there is a look down on Exhibition Place, the Molson Amphitheater at the upper left of your screen. Lake Ontario is off to the left, downtown Toronto behind that camera.
Things have stabilized a little bit between Jourdain and Carpentier. Jourdain's been able to pull out a little bit of breathing room. Saw Carpentier fighting a little bit of opposite lock when he turned in for turn 1 there. We talked about the crown of the road. That's one of the places that affects you the most. At Cleveland, we talked about it, hitting it at high speed. It's different here. Here, you brake in a straight line. As soon as you turn in like Pat did, when you cross over the center line of the road falls away. So first, the right front wheel wants to lock, and then when the right front wheel touches, it really rotates the car, and the back of the car wants to slide around, entering the corner. Not a very comfortable feeling, a lot like a forklift.
Watching Michel Jourdain Jr., 4 cars out of the race. Pappas, Tagliani, Sperafico, and Haberfeld. Mario Dominguez got that broken rear wing changed. He is 2 laps down, as is Ryan Hunter-Ray and Jeff Boss. Jimmy Vasser, Tiago Montero, and Rodolfo Levine are all 1 lap down. 9 cars are on the lead lap. Adrian Fernandez is the 9th of those, and he is about 13 seconds ahead of Paul Tracy right now. So Tracy could conceivably lap most of this field at the rate he's going.
And when you have a car that's that good, very few times in your career do you have a car that's just so clearly superior to everybody else's, and you yourself are in that group. What you have to temper is you want to keep pushing, and it sends a major signal, a major psychological blow to these guys going into the heavy part of the season. If you were to lap up to 5th place, you have to balance that against how hard is that on your equipment. Should you ease off? It's also hard to restart it if you have to get back into that mindset if you have a yellow and everyone's bunched up. And 2, the other thing is, sometimes, what was I going to say? Sometimes you make mistakes because you relax a little bit. You say, okay, I'm going to back off. A lot of the crashes happen with guys have big leads. They start thinking about the point standings. They start thinking about running 8/10. You can't create the same level of mental focus.
Jourdain continues on his way. Now, the top of the show, we said it was Blair's Forsyth against Newman Haas. Let's check how that shootout is going right now. Paul Tracy started from pole. He is the race leader. Patrick Carpentier started 4th, is running 4th. Bruno Junqueira in his position. Sebastian Bourdais, really the only driver of those 4 who is not in the position he started from. He currently runs in 6th place. But this race is far from over. We're not even at halfway yet as we go on board with Paul Tracy. A little earlier, I mentioned that he had just passed Mario Andretti on the all-time lap leader list. Well, all those milestones are coming even faster. He has now passed Bobby Rahal for 4th on the all-time list.
Fuel window open. Fuel window open. Plus 22.5.
That would be the 2nd pit stop window opening. In 6 more laps, Paul Tracy will pass Al Unser Jr. for 3rd on the all-time laps led list. So he is simply racking up personal career milestones. Calvin Fish.
I was just talking to the players team, specifically Michael Ken, who engineers Patrick Carpentier's car. He said, we have a really good balance, but he said the performance of Paul Tracy is just unbelievable. We have the same cars, and Paul is just running ahead. An unbelievable pace there. He said it really puts to mind when you think about Senna at Monaco, where he's just in the zone, and every lap is just right on the limit there, and that's what we're seeing here today with PT. Derek?
Here with the American Spirit Team Johansson entry, Stefan Johansson is here. Stefan, Vasser may not be at the front. In fact, he's not even in the top 10, but I know you have to be impressed. He just set 2nd fastest lap of the race coming from the back. That's pretty good.
Yeah, he's driving a fantastic race today. Typically, we got caught up in that melee in the start. So, you know, we just got to, you know, there's nothing we can do really to influence the result here. But like Jimmy's having a good time at least out there. You know, we just do the best we can here. Maybe if we catch a yellow with the 2 or 3 lap difference we have, we might get lucky, but it's, you know, we need luck today.
Yes, you do. In fact, there's a slew of cameras here because this weekend they're shooting a pilot for a potential reality show called Life of the Champs, and they're basing the first one around Jimmy Vasser. That could be interesting.
Well, they will certainly find out what racing fans already know, that in the life of a champion, there are a lot of days like the one Stefan Johansson was just talking about when you just need luck.
And if you were to talk to Jimmy after this race, if he had a few seconds to compose himself, I always marvel at Jimmy's ability to put things into perspective. Paul Tracy, if he's running in second, he wants to put a gun to his head. Jimmy is just as competitive, wants to win, but he sees things with a little bit more perspective.
There's a look at Sebastian Bourdais, currently running in 6th spot, top rookie in the field. Darren Manning is the next rookie in 8th. Getting back to that comment from Calvin Fish, I'm sure Paul Tracy would appreciate that comparison to the late, great Ayrton Senna, 3-time Formula One world champion from Brazil, and a man who simply ruled on the streets of Monte Carlo in that great Grand Prix every year. And that is the milieu that this man Bourdais comes from. A young Frenchman, the reigning FIA Formula 3000 champion, and what the Toyota Atlantic Championship is to the Champ Cars, Formula 3000 is to Formula One. He grew up racing on the roads in Europe, a 6-time competitor at the 24 Hours of Le Mans. The man ahead of him on the road you just saw, Oriol Servia, same background, European road racing. They are delighted at their opportunities in the Champ Car Series here in America. There is the gap from Paul Tracy to Bruno Junqueira, 23+ seconds. An amazing run for Tracy to this point. Adrian Fernandez slowly slipping back toward the race leader. Earlier I mentioned parties. Friday night they had a doozy at Wayne Gretzky's restaurant here in town. Adrian Fernandez, Roberto Moreno, Paul Tracy talking with Tommy Kendall. There's Mad Max. Everyone on hand for a great evening despite occasional showers. Of course, Roberto is Brazilian, so he would appreciate a little bit of samba. We'll take a break and be back to Toronto in a moment. In Toronto, Canada, and the Molson Champ Car Grand Prix of Toronto. I'm Bob Varsha with Tommy Kendall, Derek Daly, and Calvin Fisher in the pit lane. And Paul Tracy has dominated. Although, for the first time, Tommy, his gap has dropped just a bit. He is now just 22.5 seconds ahead of Bruno Junqueira.
Something interesting is showing up on the monitor. A little bit closer, but Paul Tracy is not slowing down, but everybody else is speeding up. Paul's complaining of a little bit of understeer. The front tire sliding a little bit more than he'd like. We heard that before the first stop. It wasn't bad enough to make any changes. The other guys were not in their car. Lots of wing changes, etc. The track appears to be coming to the rest of the guys. Whether it's going away from Paul Tracy or not, we're not sure. But the times, a little bit of correction. You saw the same thing that Pat Carpentier was fighting, a little bit of a loose condition. The back of the car wanting to step out under braking. So, I mean, even if the guys pick up a half a second, they're going to have a hard time erasing that deficit.
22.5. There's lots of traffic ahead there, Paul.
But if we get traffic and or a yellow flag, things could get interesting.
There is the second place car of Bruno Junqueira, still 22.5 seconds behind, just swinging on to Princes Boulevard. Start-finish straightaway. The Pacific Care car from Newman Haas Racing. Checking the interval back to the third place car of Michel Jourdain in the Gigante car from Team Rahal, co-owned by Bobby Rahal and David Letterman. Then Patrick Carpentier just through your screen. Here comes Oriol Servia, Sebastian Bourdais, Roberto Moreno, and Darren Manning. 4th through 8th. Adrian Fernandez in 9th, remains on the lead lap, but he is 53.7 seconds behind the race leader Tracy. On board with Jourdain.
I still see the front of the car sliding, but his hand is not all the way at the top of the steering wheel on the number of these corners. It's just shy of it. A small change, but significant. And on the exit of the tight left-hander, turn 5, he had a little bit of oversteer on the exit, so he has the understeer fighting the front of the car sliding. Then when you put that 750 horsepower, all that torque to work, it can overcome, any kind of car balance. But it looks like the balance is starting to come to Michel Jourdain.
Now in his 8th season, despite being just 26 years of age, he started racing out of Mexico City in the Champ Cars when he was just 19 years old. But he struggled for many of those early seasons until he hooked up with 3-time Champ Car titleist Bobby Rahal and CBS late night host David Letterman. Look at the numbers in the pre-Rahal years and the years with the team. This is his second full season with Team Rahal. Just 27 starts, but his first win, his first pole, 11 top fives, and a gargantuan number of laps led compared to those with his previous teams.
Talking with Ray Lato, who was the technical director last year, this year the team manager, he gave an assist to Jimmy Vasser, who was Michel's teammate last year. He said, Jimmy really challenged Michel in debriefs and so forth. He said, don't just say what I say what you think to develop those kind of skills. Now it's really important this year as a one-car team. He has no one else to fall back on, and he has really stepped up to the challenge.
His 7th start here in Toronto. His best previous finish was 12th. He's on track to do a lot better today. He is currently 3rd. There's Rodolfo Levine in the Corona car from Walker Racing. Let's get more on him with Derek Daly.
Yes, Derek Walker, this young Mexican rookie, Rodolfo Levine, you took him under your wing. He was way off the pace, and now we see him get faster almost every weekend, Derek. Are you somewhat impressed at his learning curve, how good it's been?
Yeah, I think he's really needed a lot of laps. You know, don't get a lot of testing in this series, and so it's hard to catch up. So he's doing great. Every race he gets stronger and stronger, and of course, we keep giving him that Corona at the end of the race, so he's going to need it today. It's a pretty hot race.
Can TK have some of your Corona?
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, always.
Tonight, maybe, fellas, at Paul Tracy's party, we'll have some Corona.
I have the Coronas before the show, before the race.
Yes, marketing can be a wonderful thing. The best finish of the season for Rodolfo Levine, 9th. And that was on the big Euro Speedway Lausitz Oval, the super track in Germany. He's got experience here, racing in the former Indy Light Series. Picking up the race leader.
And we were surmising that maybe the balance is shifting. We know the balance is shifting, and we were wondering how it was affecting Paul Tracy. We just heard Pat Carpentier. You see the car sliding coming out of turn 3, more out of turn 4. Carpentier says the car is extremely loose. You have to assume that his car is similar to Paul Tracy's. Big wiggle turning in for the long horseshoe. More oversteer. Look at how loose Pat Carpentier's car is.
Well, I just checked in on Paul Tracy's situation, and Todd Malloy, his engineer, said, yeah, Paul's car has gone away a little bit at the end of the runs. We were going to do a tire pressure change, but Paul said, no, leave it alone for one more run. And talking down to Peter Gibbons on Bruno's progress, he said, well, the pace is really stabilized. And just like you mentioned, Tommy, they're hopeful if they get a yellow that the race will be back on. They've got a lot of ground to catch up to Paul, but if they get a yellow, they think they have a car now which may be as fast as Paul's.
Less than 2 laps from a round of you're on board with Tracy, who has clinched the bonus championship point for leading the most laps of this race. We're past halfway. He cannot be caught for that bonus. It's been 10 years since Paul Tracy became the first Canadian driver to win.
I want you to pit this lap. Pit this lap. Confirm.
He's a little busy to confirm right now.
Watch his left thumb going to the radio saying, Roger.
Back in 1993, Paul Tracy won here. He has also won in Vancouver. In fact, he is the only Canadian driver to this point to win on home soil. Carpentier is in, so we'll have both players' Forsyth cars in the pit at the same time. That can get dicey. They are pitted nose to tail. There's
one lap in early for Carpentier. I'm assuming maybe they think they had a tire going down. That loose condition was more than just the handling
Get
going
ready
off.
and watch Elvis.
Here comes Tracy.
Ready for you. You're going to have a clear
out
pit
first. And they do.
You should have a clear pit out.
With a
Look
flourish.
for Steve waving.
Calvin Fish awaits the race leader.
We'll watch again to see if there's any front wing change. We don't think there has been a tire pressure change. They thought about it. Even the revs up there telling me superb race so far from Paul Tracy in front of the home crowd. Tires are done, new Bridgestone's fuel is done. Paul gets it back underway.
with an assist from a crewman to help ease the strain on that clutch. Here's Bruno Junqueira in from second place. And Michel Jourdain is in as well.
Fuel only, guys.
Derek Daly is in the Rahal pit.
Again, Jourdain, there's the one full turn of front wing. He said he's almost on the pace he needs to be on.
And there's Sebastian Bourdais in the Newman Haas pit. Calvin Fish is there.
See a front wing change there. Looked like one turn of right front wing only. They didn't touch the left front. Fuel and tires. New stick of tires for Bourdais.
Oh, just ahead of Roberto Moreno in the Ardez car. And Darren Manning in the RAC machine.
One thing that the front three guys that had nobody immediately behind them, they were sure to take on an absolute full tank of fuel. When you have someone right up your tailpipe, you can't afford. Look at Moreno, look to the outside of Bourdais on cold tires. What that full tank allows you to do, rather than splitting the difference and taking the equal amount of fuel during each stop, in case there's a yellow on the next stop and everyone's bunched up, they only have to take a minimal amount of fuel to get to the end of the race.
On board with Patrick Carpentier, working Manitoba Avenue. Traffic ahead.
Stopping that lap early is really going to hurt Pat, because his lap after that pit stop was slower because of the cold tires. Tires not being up to temp, which is why you always want to go the full distance on a tank of fuel. Because of that loose condition, he opted to come in early. We're going to see just how much that hurt him. Right now, it's dropped him all the way back to 9th place.
Going to take a run on Manning down into one. Can he get it done? Oh, two right-hand wheels up on the curbing. Looks like he's got the spot. That will put Carpentier 8th. Quickly opens a gap on Manning. To 185 or so on Lakeshore Boulevard. Now, apparently, Carpentier earlier had contact with Oriol Servia in turn 3, turn he has just negotiated, prior to his pit stop, which may explain why he came in a little early. Let's take another look. There's Servia on the left.
Servia takes a look down the inside. I didn't see actual contact there. They got really close.
Maybe the right front, Carpentier to the left front of Servia, but certainly not hard. Let's get more on Carpentier's situation with Calvin Fish.
Here with Mike Cannon. Michael, you pitted a lap early, which you don't want to do. What was the situation with Pat's car?
I mean, for whatever reason, our rear tires are just shagged, and he was just starting to drop back. You know, you saw those guys get around him. Our lap times were appalling, so we had to bring him in and get some rubber on there. So we'll just have to look at what we're going to do for the next 2 stints, maybe not run them the full 31 laps.
Okay, well, Michael's actually saying the tires were almost down to the cords there. He just couldn't hang on any longer.
All right, thank you, Calvin. Taking a look at the pit summary, the second of 3 scheduled stops in this 112-lap race. Paul Tracy came in first, left that way. Same for Junqueira, Jourdain, and Servia, but Carpentier came in from 4th and went out in 9th, losing 5 spots. As you said, TK, it hurt him.
We have a little bit more information on the balance situation. Is the track coming to him or not? On those new tires, it's back to status quo, namely pulling out big chunks of time. Last lap was a 101.2 for Tracy, a 102.3 to Junqueira. The next quickest car, 4 to 5 tenths slower than Paul. So apparently, when the tires are new and the full load of fuel, the balance is better for Tracy. As the fuel burns off and the tires wear, it starts shifting away from him towards the other guys. He'll definitely be in good shape if we...
26.3, plus 26.3.
Definitely in good shape if we don't get a yellow, but if we get a yellow towards the end, at the end of the last stint, we might have a pretty even match on our hands.
Adrian Fernandez getting the blue flag from race leader, from the corner workers, with race leader Paul Tracy behind him. This is to put Fernandez a lap down, leaving us with 8 cars on the lead lap in the face of this torrid pace by Paul Tracy, the local favorite. In fact, his family are celebrities this weekend. Mother Vivian, who promised he would win this race, and Father Tony, who owns the painting company, who did all of that white painting at the top of Toronto's CN Tower, the tallest building in the world at over 1,800 feet. Tony Tracy now holds the world record. We'll be back after this message. Toronto, home to more than 1 million citizens, and I saw a recent survey that showed that nearly half of those millions were born outside of Canada. Canada's largest and most diverse city. Here's a look at our Progressive Auto Insurance race summary. Well, after halfway, we have had but one leader, local favorite and hometown hero, Paul Tracy. He has set the fastest lap, and as Tommy Kendall suggested earlier, he's probably set most of the fastest laps of this race. We've had 2 full course caution flags, both of them coming very, very early on, and 4 cars are officially out of the race. Max Pappas, Alex Tagliani, Alex Sparafico, and Mario Haberfeld. Paul Tracy has now completed 70 of 112 laps. And there is extra emotion on this weekend for Paul Tracy, Patrick Carpentier, and the entire Players Forsyth team. Sponsor Players, which is also a partner in the team, an equity owner, if you will, has been a part of Canadian motorsports for some 42 years, but they are a tobacco brand, and under Canadian law, they will no longer be allowed to sponsor motorsports events after October 1st of this year. So on Thursday here in Toronto, company president and CEO Bob Bexon announced that beginning October 1st, which is before the end of the Champ Car season, Players will end all of its motorsports involvement.
And Paul told me yesterday after that pole position, Bob Bexon was about...
plus 29.4. Make sure you stay nice and focused here. We still got a ways to go, so nice pace, just stay nice and focused.
Told me that Bob Bexon was about to cry, and I ran into Bob today, and he says, we've only got one more thing to do for the perfect weekend, and that's go out and lead 112 laps and win one in the hometown, something they have not been able to do yet. And the irony is that legislation takes effect on October 1. It's conceivable if Paul Tracy were to go on to win the championship, he would have to run in a plain car, Players' first championship since Jacques Villeneuve's, without any, not have any of their branding on the car. You're Tony Scali, and Tony Scali is part engineer, part shrink, and he had a huge effect on Paul at Team Cool Green. Now he's reunited with him here at Players, and he's saying, hey, Paul, you're running a great race. There's a long ways to go. You need to stay focused. You think back earlier in Paul's career, how many times do we see him with an absolutely unassailable lead, lose focus a little bit, get tangled up with lap traffic? So Tony is forecasting that Paul is a different driver today than he was back then. But it's a hard thing to keep that focus when things are going so well and you don't have immediate pressure. When you have the pressure, it's easy in some ways. But this way, it's really hard to keep razor sharp until the very end.
Just ahead of Bruno Junqueira on the road is Tiago Montero. Derek Daly is standing by with one of his car owners.
Yes, indeed. Fittipaldi Dingman, of course, Fittipaldi being a winner here, past winner 1987, Emerson Fittipaldi. Emerson, I know Cleveland was a big disappointment. Crashing the warm-up, Tiago not allowed to run. How does he feel today? Is he physically okay?
He's physically good. He's doing well. We had the car out of balance. First was understeering, then was loose. You know, Derek, all the drivers complain all the time.
Emerson, you won here in 87. This is one of the great classic street circuits.
I think the race is great, the track is great, but the event is fantastic. You know, the whole town, Toronto, Canada is watching our race. It's a fantastic event.
Thank you, Emerson.
Emerson Fittipaldi took pole for the inaugural running of this race in 1986. Bobby Rahal won it. So Emerson came back and finished the job of winning the event in 1987, as Derek mentioned. There's his man, Tiago Montero. At the top of the race, we mentioned that he is back after missing the Cleveland round following a heavy crash that left him with a mild concussion. Cart doctors would not clear him to run that event. Let's take a look back at what happened in the afternoon warm-up before the nighttime race. Far into the racetrack, high speed, turn 8. The rookie got it turned backwards, hit the tire wall heavily. Although he never lost consciousness, the kart safety team took no chances. You see the heavy damage to the back of the car. It was determined he had a mild concussion. and the doctors would not let him race.
He was back at the track shortly thereafter, was in his car on the grid when he got the word, and it's not as subjective as it used to be. It used to be if you lost consciousness, they'd hold you out. Now they have a set of tests called the impact test, which measure lots of things, including reaction time. And Montero did not pass those tests, was substantially down on some of his reaction time. He asked Tiago, he said, I'm fine, I'm fine. Drivers always say that if they're conscious even. But Dr. Steve Olvey says, you got to go by the results from the impact test. They pulled him out of the car on the grid at Cleveland. And so there's a lot more science in to determine whether these guys are fit for the demands and the risks of auto racing.
There's Michel Jourdain, currently third in a podium position here in Toronto. Far better than he's ever done here before. On to Lakeshore Boulevard. Through Thunder Alley. And a little squirrely. Well, now Rodolfo Levine is in the pits, and there's a lot of work going on at the back of the car. Derek Daly, what's up?
Well, maybe the party and the Corona might have to be wait because there's sadness here. At the last pit stop, the Walker Racing team noticed a crack in the rear wing mounting post, so they brought him back in purely on safety reasons. So Levine's run on the top 10 is ended, but it was not his fault.
What a thing for a driver to sit there in the car while the crew works frantically to get him back out there, knowing the laps are just slipping away. On board with his teammate, Darren Manning, making his way around exhibition place. Checking the drivers who are moving up. Jeff Boss started caboose on the field. He's gained 5 spots. Oriol Servia's moved up 4. Darren Manning 3. Thiago Montero and Rodolfo Levine, up until that long pit stop, had moved up 2 places from where they started the race.
And this thing right here, these are called the flugelhorns. And those are what are missing on Adrian Fernandez's car from that first lap running with Jimmy Vasser. And those help channel the air from this is underneath the side of the side pod. The front of the side pod narrows down at the back of the car right in tight to the gearbox back here. And it allows the air to go over those flugelhorns. They create, after we found out last weekend, a couple 100 pounds of downforce. Bourdais ran the last couple laps of those races without those, ironically, after a tangle with Adrian Fernandez.
How close they get to the wall. Notice how steady the chassis is while the suspension works. Here's Oriol Servia now into 4th place, having another great run. Calvin Fish has more on him.
Well, he's certainly been very consistent of late, Bob. 6 top 6 finishes. We're talking to the team. They've been searching a little bit for traction this weekend, which is ever more important now with no traction control. They think they've got a handle on the car. This last set of times, they said, Oriol said he's very happy with that. And they'd really like to celebrate his birthday today with a podium finish, but he's got a lot of work to do to get up to Jourdain.
2 previous starts here in Toronto for Servia, and he hasn't had much success. 11th in 2000, 23rd in 2001. He did not race here last year. He's in position for a great finish today with 35 laps remaining. While we have a moment, I know the Simple Green Champ Car Safety Team wants to send a shout out to a friend. Andrew Sierra from Elizabeth, New Jersey is going through a tough time. A good friend of the kart safety crew. They all want to wish him luck. Oh, Jimmy Vasser and one of the Ardez cars.
The Ardez got going, the car got going. That's Mario Dominguez.
There is Jimmy. Jimmy came together with Dominguez's teammate Roberto Moreno last weekend in Cleveland.
And we are going to get an answer to our question about whether Paul Tracy can hold off these guys if a yellow flag erases that margin.
And there goes Bruno Junqueira. You can imagine he's pretty happy because a 33-second deficit to the race leader will now be erased, as Tommy mentioned. Jimmy looks to be in pretty good shape. He just needs to get it turned around and refired.
And guess what the lap times were? Paul Tracy ran a 101.313 last lap. Bruno 101.315. 2 thousandths of a second difference. Now the gap stabilized. We're 15, 16 laps into this run, which is about last time where Bruno started to pick up the pace. Paul is not just barely clipped him. Jimmy was in trouble trying to get stopped. He tried to miss. You saw him pull to the left right there to try to miss Dominguez and just clipped him going by.
It's like he thought about going down the inside. Yellows are out. The safety car driven by 2 members of the female pace car team. Kelly Williams, a native Torontonian, who races in the Canadian version of NASCAR known as CASCAR, the stock car series. Gail Truis is signaling drivers from the passenger side window.
Yes.
There's Jimmy Vasser, no doubt trying to negotiate to get himself fired up and back into the race. He is behind the wall, so he's off the racing line. Let's go to Derek Daly.
Dominguez was just in. They changed the front wing. This is the front wing they took off. The locator of the bottom part is twisted on this, and you can see over here some damage, and the wing end plate broken off here on the side of Dominguez's front wing. They change it with a ratchet. They only have 4 bolts and or 6 bolts and a ratchet. They can change it in about 12 seconds. Calvin?
Well, we talked about Bruno Junqueira being happy. The team went absolutely crazy. They fist pumped. They know what this means to them. They're back in the game once again. Now, the key for Paul Tracy is we probably won't see any of the leaders pit until lap 81. That's when the final window opens and they go the rest of the distance without stopping one more time. And we've seen thus far that Paul Tracy has a decisive advantage in the first half of the run, so this may save him once again.
What might be critical is the window opens next lap. If they pit under yellow, any bobble by the Tracy team or any sort of a quicker stop by Junqueira after dominating would put him behind Bruno with a question as to whether he's faster.
Now the crew is going into the pit lane in Paul Tracy's pit. That's the only crew we see prepared for a pit stop. Now Michel Jourdain's crew comes over the wall.
This is really frustrating for Paul to not be able to pit with that cushion he built up. The guys have not caught him yet, but I expect they will before the pace car is back around.
Now the Vistion crew for Oriol Servia takes their positions in the pit lane.
The guys are all ready for you. We're all set up. It's going to be a Brahma of a pit stop. Everything's going to be fine.
It's got to be pretty reassuring. It's going to be fine.
But there's so many things that go into a pit stop. He's asking the pace car to go ahead. He knows the field has not caught him yet. If Bruno does not catch him.
We are the best, remember that.
Tommy, Scott Remke has asked Carr to close the pits because Tracy will have such a big advantage. The rest of the boys will potentially be caught behind the pace car.
That's a bunch of baloney because, I mean, here he comes. He's going to get it. He's going to.
You hear him on the radio. His left thumb is on the radio button. He's trying to get him to pick up the pace.
Our sensors heard the F-bombs.
As you get here, remember to watch your speed in the pit lane. Be careful in the pit lane.
This is going to help him a bunch getting there. It's a major faux pas by Junqueira not catching up.
Okay, look for Steve. Steve's waving to you. You got an open pit in, and you got an open pit out.
Paul Tracy cruises down. They just need to do the same thing one more time, and he can maybe take this players' card of victory for the first time here in Toronto. We suspect no changes. Waiting on fuel. Fuel comes in front. This is going to be close.
I agree with you, Tommy. Junqueira should have been hustling around to get back to that pit stop. Recall Long Beach a year ago when Michael Andretti had a big lead, pitted. Second place car was Jimmy Vasser. He was a little lackadaisical about getting around to a yellow flag. Michael wound up winning the race.
Jourdain got around Junqueira. Junqueira was stopped for a long time. I can't for the life of me figure out why Junqueira did not catch up on that in-lap.
There you see the Newman Haas crew cleaning up after the stop. Back out on track. Cars bunching together. To see the pace car to see whether or not, no, lights are still on. So no indication we're going back to green. Let's get more on Junqueira's strategy. Calvin Fish.
Down here with Peter Gibbons. He's very frustrated. Peter, tell us about the situation there. Why did Bruno not close up the gap?
Oh, he was closing up the gap as quickly as he could. There was a car in front of him stopping from closing up the gap.
Scott Remke was asking for them to really keep the pits closed until everyone bunched up. But really, if you're leading the race and the pace car has got you, that's really not the...
was fine. I mean, what they did was fine. Just Bruno screwed up and locked him up and screwed his pit stop up, so he's got himself back to third.
Okay, well, it was a bad pit stop down here, but his teammate Bordeaux had a great one. He jumped out in front of Serbia.
You heard Peter Gibbons say he locked him up. Bruno Junqueira may have been his own worst enemy on that stop. Let's take a look. Here's Junqueira, bottom of your screen as Paul Tracy comes out.
Locked the wheels going in, got way too close to the wall, pinned his guy. Look how close that left front guy is to the wall.
Oh, man. You see cars getting out ahead of him. Oh, boy, that was close. And look at that scrum behind.
Now, when he said there he was held up by a guy on his in lap, a lapped car, oftentimes guys that are off the pace a little bit go to sleep a little bit and they lollygag around to the pits.
Ripping off a tear-off, a little plastic strip to clear his visor.
On top of the fact that he was able to maintain the lead, there's a lot of lapped cars between Paul Tracy and second place Michel Jourdain. So the big gap that he had built up goes away, but those lapped cars, it'll take a little while for Jourdain to get around him and see who has the speed at that point. Paul should have a few seconds in hand before Jourdain clears.
While we're under caution, here's a program note. Next weekend, the Super Bowl champion quarterback Brad Johnson, Jeff Garcia, Mark Brunell, and Tom Brady join big-time receivers Rod Smith and Jerry Porter at the 989 Sports NFL Quarterback Challenge here on CBS. Now let's go down to Derek Daly in the Ray Hall pits.
With Ray Lito, team manager here for Michel Jourdain. You've now made all the adjustments during the pit stops. Does he have enough to run down Tracy?
Well, I don't know. We're going to find out, aren't we? I mean, we were running, 61 flats. Paul's a little quicker than that. We'll see what it's like when they're together. We've taken out most of the understeer we had at the beginning, so I think this is the best shot we got. Obviously, we made up this gap with the yellow, so.
Are you surprised at Tracy's pace?
Yeah, I mean, he was able to get out front, and Tag couldn't keep up, and everybody else was running the same pace. It was really quick.
Thank you, Ray. Calvin?
Down here in Paul Tracy's pit, and I'm here with his mother, Vivian. How much does he want to win this race here today, Viv? He won it 10 years ago in '93. How special would it be?
Really wants to win. For players last time at this track, it's big this weekend.
This has been a spectacular season. He hasn't won a championship, Viv. How much is that on his mind?
Well, obviously he wants to win, the championship, and I think he's got a good chance this year. So let's just keep our fingers crossed, and this is the last thing we needed was this yellow, but hey, you have to take it as it comes.
Well, she's seen it many times before. Paul Tracy looking for victory here today, Bob.
We're all looking forward to that, and it should be exciting. Now, in case you're wondering why the yellow flag is taking so long, they had to do a second wave by to get all the lapped cars out of the way of the race leaders for a clean restart.
So that cushion or those cars in between Paul and Michel are now gone.
There you see him, Tracy in blue and white,
we will go green, so be ready.
Jourdain.
Jourdain is right behind you for a position.
If you look up there, those are the marbles, the little bits of the rubber that slide off the tires. And they are just, the reason they're called marbles, if the car gets out there, it feels like it's on top of a bunch of ball bearings.
Yellow.
A little bit.
Oh, yellow. No start.
No start.
No start.
You get a little off line, you will be in the wall.
So this will take some time now. Kelly Williams brings the safety car to a stop in the pit lane. Paul Tracy will be the leader as they reform for a restart. He's going to want to try to hang on to become the first wire-to-wire winner since his teammate Patrick Carpentier earlier this year in Monterey, California. That's the only flag-to-flag winner we've seen was Carpentier. Teammate Tracy hoping to join him. Now Tuesday here on CBS, the Big Brother house guests are competing for $500,000. But this time their exes have moved in on their game. Brace yourself for the X Factor and one explosive summer of television. All new Big Brother Tuesday at 8, 7 Central on CBS, America's most watched network.
As we look out the back of the players, Lola, Paul Tracy back at Michel Jourdain.
Okay, we need to wait until we get to the acceleration cone. I think everything was fine there. I think the flag up, but let's just concentrate. And we're going to go green again here.
I was talking with Vivian Tracy today, and we were talking about Michelle Jourdain and how much his attitude has changed, and she gave me the greatest quote about winning, and you can get an idea where the intensity of Paul comes from. She said, winning is a lot like shaving. Once you start doing it, if you don't keep doing it, you look like people think you're a bum.
It's good. We do get the green flag time. Everything met the specifications of flagman J.D. Wilbur.
You see Jourdain fighting for traction off turn 1, and Paul Tracy hooks it up and is gone. His next couple laps will be real critical, both to keep, for Jourdain to keep Tracy close and to see evaluate what kind of speed the two have relative to each other. Very close with
Carpentier and Manning. The rookie loses out. You ride with Manning. That was for 7. Rocketing up Manitoba Drive. 90-degree right-hander coming up and very bumpy.
See these champ cars slew sideways. 750 horsepower, cold tires, no traction control.
Earlier we heard from Team Rahal team manager Ray Lito. He said earlier this weekend it's so great not to have traction control. It's an electronic technology that helps the drivers by maximizing the available traction through ignition interruption, controlling wheel spin. Lito says we used to work for hours with the electronics engineers trying to map the track for the traction control. Now that none of the cars have it, we don't need to worry about that. Once again, our pictures today are coming to us from Canadian host broadcaster Global TV. And Paul Tracy is riding the wings of crowd support. He is simply ripping away from this field. If there's a man of destiny in this race, he is it. We'll be back. Exhibition place, Bob Barsha, Tommy Kendall, Derek Daly, and Calvin Fish with you for round 10 of the Bridgestone presents the Champ Car World Series powered by Ford, the Molson Champ Car Grand Prix of Toronto. If there were any doubts about Paul Tracy's ability to pull away from Michelle Jourdain, Bruno Junqueira, Sebastian Bourdais, and Oriol Servia, he is erasing it. He is now 3.6 seconds clear of the field after a recent restart. He has simply taken this race by the throat. On board with Jourdain. He is second. Behind him, Bruno Junqueira. Third and second, respectively, in the championship. Second and third on the racetrack right now. Look at that rear suspension work.
We talked about how stiff the chassis are. The whole idea there is, even as stiff as the chassis is, no matter how stiff it is, it still flexes. The idea is you only want the things moving that are supposed to move, otherwise you can't tune it. The shock absorber won't dampen out flex in the chassis.
Lap car left the pit, lap car out of the pit.
And this could provide a pick for Junqueira if Jourdain gets held up by this slow car.
That's Jeff Boss in the bright yellow machine from Dale Coyne Racing. He's got a problem. He can't move too far aside or he could get on those marbles and find himself kissing the concrete. Jourdain and Junqueira get by, and then Sebastian Bourdais comes calling. I'll credit Boss. He's doing everything he can to stay out of the way. He is 4 laps down in 14th place. Once again, 9 cars are on the lead lap after that restart.
The first lap at speed, the gap was Paul was a full second quicker than Jourdain. The last 2 laps been about a half a second quicker. This time by...
Nice job, 21 more, 21 to go.
Tracy must have gotten slowed down more by Boss than the other guys. He was 8/10 slower than Jourdain that lap.
Swinging onto Lakeshore Boulevard in front of a crowd that's just been announced at 73,255 fans for a 3-day weekend total with some marginal weather on Friday and Saturday at nearly 167,000.
It's not a surprise. Paul Tracy's been a draw. All the Canadians have been a draw for years, but things are lining up, having the best season of his career, 3 early wins, players putting their might behind him. It's like Tiger Woods being lead and going into the final round. Paul Tracy sitting on the pole here in Toronto. The people come out in droves.
Talked earlier about players ending their motorsports involvement. If you're a racing fan, you might try to draw an analogy to R.J. Reynolds' tobacco, withdrawing from the popular NASCAR series, but it's not quite the same. Although R.J. Reynolds has been great for stock car racing, Players touches all forms of Canadian racing and has funded so many Canadian drivers over the years, from Gilles Villeneuve, great Formula One driver and arguably the patron saint of Canadian racing drivers, through Paul Tracy and Patrick Carpentier. The enormity of the impact Players' withdrawal will have on Canadian racing is very difficult to overstate. To Derek Daly.
Bob, you're exactly right. Difficult to overstate that, because I remember in Formula One, there were 7 French Grand Prix drivers, all supported at one stage by the Elf Petroleum, which is the French petroleum company. They had the driver development program there. When they stopped it, within about 7 or 8 years, there were no French Grand Prix drivers. So Canadian motorsports, particularly from the grassroots level, will greatly miss the type of financial support those athletes got from Players.
Good point, Derek. Oriol Servia with Roberto Moreno on his tail. That's for 5th. 19 races to go. 19 laps to go for Paul Tracy, who won the first 3 races of the year at St. Petersburg, Florida, Monterey, Mexico, and Long Beach, California. Then we went over to Europe, to England and Germany, where Paul had a brutal run of luck. He has not won here on CBS this year. Maybe about to change that as well. By the way, next year, according to an announcement from Championship Auto Racing teams today, there will be as many as 10 Champ Car races here on CBS Sports. We are looking forward to that. The season will open in St. Petersburg next year on CBS. You'll also see Long Beach, arguably the most famous event on the kart calendar. 18 laps to go for Tracy. Then Jourdain, Junqueira, Bourdais, and this pair, Servia and Moreno, with Patrick Carpentier sliding into view there. 7th place and closing on Moreno. On board with Patrick.
Keep you updated on the gap up front. The last 2 laps, Paul is starting to pull away again after he was clear of traffic. 4/10 last lap, 3/10 of a second this lap. The gap now 4.2, back to Jourdain.
There's Carpentier. This could be a huge day for the Players Forsyth team. Incidentally, we said it is a thoroughly Canadian team. Actually, team owner Jerry Forsyth is an American. Let's get down to Calvin Fish.
Here with Neil Mickelwright. Neil, Paul seems to have a very big advantage on the first half of the run, but then it stabilizes. Are you concerned with traffic and potential another caution? They'll have a strong car at the end?
Well, obviously, we're keeping an eye on the traffic situation, and we're still about 18 seconds behind the next back marker. The car's pretty good most of the way through the session. Definitely a little bit better at the beginning, but we think that's pretty much the same for everybody.
Okay, well, fingers crossed down here. They're pretty confident.
16 laps to go. Next time under the flag stand for Paul Tracy. And this battle gets tighter and tighter. On board with Tracy.
Take a look when he comes up into turn 8 under braking. There's through a couple fast right-hand kinks when he brakes and downshifts up here. Watch, see how the car dances. No sign of oversteer or rear wheel lockup that time, like we were seeing towards the end of the second stint.
Prince's Boulevard. At the far end, you see Prince's Gates.
Plus 4.4 seconds.
There's the gap. Tracy being informed by his team. There's Bruno Junqueira in 3rd. You have a gap from 1st to 2nd of 4.5 seconds, roughly. You have to go all the way back to the gap from 7th to 8th to find 2 cars that are more than a second apart. To Derek Daly.
Down here in the Rahal pit. By the way, Bobby Rahal is not here. He left last night to go watch his son Graham run at Sonoma in the Kart Stars of Tomorrow ICC Championship race. But I think it's fair to say they are actually admiring what Paul Tracy is doing. although their man, they said, we know he's driving as hard as he can possibly go. And Jourdain has just done his 4 fastest laps of the race in the last 5 laps. And yet Tracy still seems to creep away.
Actually, Jourdain had Tracy on that last lap by 5 thousandths of a second.
For the first time, Jourdain has dropped into the 60-second range, 60.7 that lap, now a 61.2. Paul still in the 60s, so he pulled out another 3/10 that lap. But Jourdain set their car up for this sprint to the end. I'll tell you what, if we get a yellow, those players' guys are going to have a fight on their hands. He said it's about the same for everyone, but it's clear that everybody but Paul gets stronger as the stint goes along.
Plunging into turn 3 goes Michel Jourdain in second place, 4.7 seconds behind race leader Paul Tracy. We'll be back. Board as they sail in. There is Sebastian Bourdais, who's been fairly quiet today, despite his 3 in the first 9 races of the Bridgestone Presents the Champ Car World Series powered by Ford season. He currently runs in 4th place behind Paul Tracy, Michel Jourdain, and Bruno Junqueira, with this man, Patrick Carpentier, in 7th. And let's check that stare down between the players Forsyth and Newman Haas teams. Paul Tracy remains the only leader in this race thus far. Patrick Carpentier has dropped back to 7th. Bruno Junqueira and Sebastian Bourdais from Newman Haas running 3rd and 4th in the Pacific Care and Lilly cars. Beautiful view of downtown Toronto. One of the most vibrant cities you'll see anywhere. And one of the theater capitals of the world. More than 75 productions going on at any one time. And here's that battle for 4th, 5th, 6th. Oriol Servia in 5th, followed by Roberto Moreno, Patrick Carpentier, and Darren Manning.
You saw Oriol Servia in the orange number 20 car pulling off a clear one of the visor tear-offs, getting rubber and oil on the front of that visor. They have real thin layers of plastic.
Rodolfo Levine off and on. He's going to be directed down behind the concrete barrier on the escape road by the Simple Green Card safety team. He'll probably be allowed to re-enter the track, but only after all the cars in view have passed. Now let's get back to Servia and Derek Daly.
Servia's engineer is Steve Chalice. Of course, Steve Chalice was engineer for Paul Tracy last year. And in recent weeks, Steve Chalice has had a lot of discussions with Oriol Servia about how aggressive he knows Tracy is and how aggressive you have to be to win in this league. Kevin Diamond, their public relations representative, told me, with that in mind, don't be surprised to see Servia make an attack on Bourdais before the end of this race.
He slipped back a little ways. He's not really in striking distance right now, but that's the one knock against Oriol Servia. He's shown speed. He's got a real string of consistency, but both in the junior formula and in champ cars, he's been close, but no cigar. He has a 2nd place finish this year at Milwaukee, his career best, but the one knock against him is, can he get the job done when he really needs to put a move on someone?
He's riding the best string of top 6 finishes in his career, but as Tommy just mentioned, there is Sebastian Bourdais. I think before Oriol Servia can attack him, he's first going to have to deal with the guys in his mirrors, Moreno and Carpentier.
Which reminds me of the comment before the race yesterday that Junqueira made. He said, I'm going to force Paul Tracy into a mistake by applying tons of pressure. He has not applied 1 ounce of pressure to Paul Tracy today, and Jourdain is starting to pull away.
There he is running behind his teammate Junqueira.
Having said that, Junqueira is kind of the Junqueira we saw all last year. Very feisty, very emotional. That tells me he finally feels like he's in the thick of these races. Had trouble getting the language down with the new team, with the Newman Haas team. He expected to just jump in there and be the dominant guy. It hasn't been that way, but there have been signs that those guys are starting to gel together and that Junqueira is more a factor. The feistiness I'm seeing from him tells me that he feels like he's more competitive than he's been in the past.
As I mentioned, a quiet race for Bourdais. Only the 3rd time this year in 10 races that he has not led a lap. Calvin Fish.
I just checked in with Craig Hampson, Sebastian's engineer, and he said we've had a pretty good day. Bad first lap. He said Sebastian had a bad start, got out-shoveled on the first lap, but we've really been working hard, keeping the heads down. The boys in the pits have had a great day. We've picked up 1 position on every stop, but he said what Paul Tracy has done today is absolutely phenomenal.
I'd have to agree with that. The gap is now 6.79 seconds from Paul Tracy to 2nd place Michel Jourdain. He's been absolutely dominant. And it looks like he may well end a streak for the Players team in their final few races among the Champ cars. They have never won in a Champ car on Canadian soil in all of their 17 previous victories together.
Coming from Bourdais' team, that's very high praise. When you witnessed the duel last week on the runways at Cleveland, the pace that Bourdais and Tracy ran, with Bourdais eventually coming out on top. Both those guys, I went out with them Saturday night afterwards.
7 laps to go, plus 6.8. 7 laps, plus 6.8.
Down to the flats, and those two guys were absolutely spent. Bourdais had just won his third race, first one on home soil, but the guy was gassed. Blisters on both their hands. They could barely hold on to the wheel. So for them to tip their hat to Paul Tracy would feel pretty good, I think, if Paul heard that.
Well, I thought about that as we were watching from Paul Tracy's onboard camera, and he's listening to his crew. It's a hot day. He's been doing this for 105 laps, virtually without a break, except for 2 very short pit stops. Make that 3 pit stops.
We talked about Paul Tracy's conditioning. He really turned the corner a couple years ago when he got into cycling. We talked about the Tour de France coverage. If you go into Paul Tracy's bus during the weekend, all he has is tuned into the Tour de France coverage. If he has a hero, I don't think he has many heroes in the auto racing world, but his hero is Lance Armstrong and what he's been able to do on a bike. And Paul has really committed himself to his training the last couple of years. All these guys take it very, very seriously, but it's a point of pride. On a hard
6 laps to go, plus 6.9. 6 laps remaining.
When you can run this kind of pace and just rubs everybody into the ground.
Paul's mom looking on. These are the nerve-wracking moments. Where the marbles on either side of the racing line. Working the way around Jeff Boss. Now let's see what traffic does to Paul Tracy. He's got several slower cars ahead of him. Boss, Fernandez. Boss gets out of the way quickly. That's a credit. Fernandez up ahead.
As the leader, you have to pay a little bit of attention to the guys in front if they're engaged in their own battle. They're getting blue flags, move over flags, which we're really focused on in the drivers' meeting. But if guys are in their own battle, sometimes they don't know a guy who's caught him as quickly. Adrian is not engaged with that car in front of him, so hopefully he'll see the blue flags. He's several laps down. I would expect him to pull over.
5 laps to go, 5 to go, plus 7 seconds, plus 7.
5 laps to go as he swings by Prince's Gate. What a day for Paul Tracy. Turn 3, not close enough to make the move on Fernandez. Fernandez is trying to stay on the lead lap. He dropped a lap down, then in the final round of pit stops, got back on the lead lap. Last lap for Fernandez, a 62.8. For Tracy, a 61.7. On board with Carpentier now. It's Roberto Moreno up ahead.
Moreno, who is hoping to get around Servia, has now slid back and is having to fight off Carpentier to the back. You see how much these guys, a little slip by Moreno under braking. Rear wheels locked up, much like Dominguez, his teammate that put him in the tire barrier. When you're Carpentier, you smell blood. If he can get back into his rhythm, it'll be hard to get by. Look at that oversteer that Pat is fighting. Man, these guys earn it.
4 laps to go, Pat.
108 laps in the books now. Back to Paul Tracy. Darren Manning behind Carpentier. That's for position. Moreno, Carpentier, and Manning, 6th, 7th, and 8th.
Pat went a little wide there, didn't quite get it stopped. Lights the tires up to the right and to the left.
And Manning is all over him.
Now, relatively speaking, with the power and grip that these cars have, this is like you driving your production car in the snow. Now,
3 laps to go, 3 laps to go. Do nothing stupid here. Just keep your mind in this thing. 3 laps remaining.
Do nothing stupid. Okay.
Bet he hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, right. Thanks for the reminder.
But imagine now we're back here with Paul Tracy. But imagine Carpentier. He's got a guy behind him and a guy in front of him. It'd be like driving in the snow as fast as you can to get to the store. Not being real safe and careful, just on the ragged edge with the thing wanting to get away from you at every corner.
It is the most amazing athletic exercise, driving these heavy, high downforce, extremely powerful race cars with 2.65-liter turbocharged V8 engines, making 750 plus horsepower.
When I drove, I used to always bristle when people said our race car drivers athletes. I don't try to convince anyone anymore, and in some ways they're not traditional athletes. They don't have to run the 40 in this speed. But imagine doing your chosen athletic endeavor, whether it's shooting free throws, playing one-on-one basketball with a loaded gun pointed at your head, and it's a whole different ball game in terms of what kind of condition and how precise you need to be. Little lockup from Paul. And Fernandez is not exactly yielding. The guys behind him are not running any quicker than Paul. Still, even behind Fernandez, the gap is staying about constant.
He has 7 seconds in hand over Michel Jourdain in second, so he doesn't really need Adrian Fernandez to get out of the way. And Fernandez, for his part, is trying to stay on the lead lap right to the end. White flag next time by.
Fernandez is already a lap down, which makes this a little puzzling. But the thing, Paul doesn't need to get by him, but does Paul know he doesn't need to get by him? The key is that it's really important that the team tells him that that gap is stabilizing. Otherwise, he can get frustrated and get out of his rhythm and say, I've got to get by this guy, I've got to get by this guy. As long as he knows that the gap is still stable.
Hey, Paul, this is the white flag. White flag, we are plus 6.9 seconds, so be really smart here. Last lap, bring it home nice and smooth.
That's what the team is thinking when they say that to him. Be smart here. You got 6.9 seconds. Fernandez is going along at a reasonable clip. You don't have to get him.
And what a difference in a couple of words. It shows the maturity and the calming influence of Tony Sacali. He says, nice and easy rather than don't do something stupid.
Should he hold on for the remainder of this lap, Paul Tracy will become the 5th different winner in the last 5 Champ Car races. At Milwaukee, Michel Jourdain. Laguna Seca, Patrick Carpentier. At Portland, Adrian Fernandez. At Cleveland, Sebastian Bourdais. And here in Toronto, it appears it will be Paul Tracy. And a crowd of some 73,000 people, predominantly pro-Canadian, will come to their feet to welcome home native son Paul Tracy from Toronto, who will win.
You are the king of Toronto, man. Great job. Yeah, that a boy. Good. Thanks, Paul. Great job. 3 guys, fantastic job. Way to go.
4th career victory, 4th win of the season for Paul Tracy, the 23rd of his career, the 18th for his Players Forsyth team, as their season and their career winds down. CBS Sports coverage of the Molson Champ Car Grand Prix will continue after this message. Welcome back live to Exhibition Place. Paul Tracy attempted a celebratory donut invented by his good friend and former Champ Car driver Alex Zanardi. He got halfway through it and found out he didn't have quite enough breadboard for the donut.
And Paul is pretty hard on the outside, but he's pretty soft on the inside. I would not be surprised to see Paul Tracy choked up after this win.
In the most dominant fashion, taking pole, leading every lap, and honoring Mom Vivian's promise after qualifying that he would win here in his hometown for the Players Forsyth team. Let's get down to Derek Daly.
It is a great time of celebration here, Paul. I know you got to try and get this helmet off. Paul, your mom's here. Just listen to these people. That was maybe the defining race win of your career.
It really was, and I got to thank Team Players, everybody at Team Players, and especially Bob Bexon. He's the guy that put this whole program together, and this is what I can do for the team, and it's a great day for Canada and a great day for Players, and we're really, really happy. And I'm glad all the fans were here to...
Just listen to that support, Paul. Listen to the support.
It's great. I mean, I'm just... the car was perfect today. The team gave me a perfect car.
And guess who's here? Mom Vivian. What a performance.
Oh, I was just
wonderful.
Remember, you promised us yesterday he was going to win this.
And it's been 10 long years.
This is Bob Bexon from Players, also so supportive of Paul. And Tony, his dad, is here. Good to see you, Tony. Okay, fellas.
What a great moment for the Tracy family. And Derek said it, perhaps the defining race of Paul's glittering Champ Car career. Plenty more still to come from Toronto. Stay with us. Here's our Progressive Auto Insurance race summary. The winner, Paul Tracy, leading every lap and setting fast lap of the race. 4 cars out. Plenty more to come from Exhibition Place in Toronto. Stay with us. We'll be back in a moment. 15 over Bruno Junqueira. For Tommy Kendall, Derek Daly, and Calvin Fish, I'm Bob Varsha saying so long from Canada, where Paul Tracy has won the Molson Champ Car Grand Prix of Toronto. This has been a presentation of CBS Sports.